No, grateful to be back with you. Last week was gone, and I know in the last month I've missed 2 of the Sundays, and so just want to get up and start off by just letting you know my commitment to preaching God's word every week is not wavering. Just stage of life of getting engaged and all that stuff is. But yeah. There was a cool clap. You can. Until married, I anticipate every time I say engage you to clap. Kidding. But just really excited to be back in from here till the point of actually getting married. We'll be in here every single week preaching. And then, for the foreseeable future after marriage, just in the pulpit regularly and being with you all. It's the joy of my life. And so before we dive into this morning's message, I do have one more announcement for today. And it's going to, Jacob, don't put it up on the screen just yet. I'm going to give you a little bit of a disclaimer before I do. So one of the things was when I got called to be the lead pastor here back in March of 20. We didn't come in right away. We didn't, there was a process of seeing me become the lead pastor, building out a team to come in here and help lead the charge of relaunching, restarting the church under the now umbrella of Phos Church. And one of the things we did was our network gave us a large sum of money that we'd ultimately have to pay back. They call that a loan. And we did a lot of the renovations. And we just said, hey, when you look at where we are in the world today, it's 2020, and inside the church was not 2020. And we said we need to just do some things that would brighten up the church. Now, one of the things we talked about was our parking lot. It was bad when we came in, and I started getting quotes on parking lots. And I said, but that's all of our money. So we couldn't do all of our money towards the parking lot. So what we ended up doing was we had it blackened, and then we had it striped with yellow stripes, and then we did some patchwork. But the person that gave me that quote, he said, hey, I promise you this will only last you a year. And I said, that's all we need. Give us some time to see God work here, move here, bring people here, and then we'll go from there. So he was not wrong. In a year's time, it looked like our parking lot got hit by World War III. It just looked like a war zone if you were here, and you were always risking blowing out a tire. And God help you if you had to walk to your car, you might have fallen in the hole and never been found. We were in dire need of a parking lot. And so we began, again, looking at what it would look like to get a new parking lot. And so we started getting those quotes, and we actually had somebody come in relatively low with $60,000. And so we said, okay, well, let's try and raise that in 6 months. If we, that's kind of our God-sized goal. We said, hey, this is really going to stretch us as a church, but we see this as necessary. And so 6 months, that was, we had our parking lot done 3 months ago, back in May. And so for 3 months, or 2.5 months, we've enjoyed a nice new parking lot. And one of the things I reached out to Rhonda, who does some graphics at times, and I said, hey, could you build out a parking lot? Instead of us doing a thermometer about where we're at on our goal, let's just do a parking lot, and we'll put cars in there as we start getting closer. And, every spot represents X amount of dollars, and so eventually, but I wanted people to see that you were given towards people, right? That the parking lot is representative of people coming here, having a place here, and being able to come in and have a welcoming environment. And so initially, as we're starting to create that graphic, I said, you can put about 4 cars in there thus far. And so I wanted us to give us an update about where we are on that. Jacob, if you could go ahead and put the graphic up on the screen. So just praising the Lord for all He's done. There, you'll see a parking spot. If you look really closely, there's a parking spot up by the orange car that's open. But there's cars on the lots. It's fully paid for. There's not still money to be raised there. But yeah, that was as of 2 weeks ago. God came through. God provided, and we no longer have that debt. And We actually asked for one spot to be open still, just so our church would have that frame of mind. Though God's provided, we're always wanting to keep an open space, an open spot for somebody new that might come here, and always be reminded that, hey, we want to have a welcoming environment. And so just want to thank you all for your continued generosity, your faithfulness towards the church and what God's doing here. We see God working in really tremendous ways. And so that was the family business I wanted to start off with this morning. And honestly, I was getting geeked about it. And I was like, can we just do like a message on God's faithfulness today? And ultimately, I think anytime you look at God's word, you can see his faithfulness. So we'll see his faithfulness through this idea of friendship that we're talking about today. But we are jumping back into our series entitled Skilled Living, a series going through some of the Proverbs and talking about, how to live wisely. In the day and age, in the world that we live in, there's all these different elements to this thing called life. And we wanted to look at those in isolation as we go through the books of the Proverbs where we see just this wisdom literature. This would make us wise for living. And so last week, Pastor Justin did a message on parenting and family, and I was able to watch it back. I was encouraged by the word. I hope you were encouraged by the word. But this morning, we're talking about this idea called friendship. And it may seem elementary. Maybe you came into this place this morning and you think, hey, Tyler, friendship is something we deal with like pre-kindergarten. We start training people to, learn how to be a friend before kindergarten. And if we don't have it by now, there's no hope. But my message this morning is not to say, hey, here are 5 tips on how to become on how to get friends. I am not expanding your social media influence today. In fact, my goal is probably actually to dwindle your social media influence today as we talk about what real friendship is. That's the goal. We're talking today about what is friendship and how to be a friend based on what the Bible has to say. Because I think that when we look at friendship and we define it, the definition for friendship in the world that we're living in today is getting really foggy. It's getting really foggy. I mean, think about it with me for a moment. Think about social media. It's making the definition of friendship really weird. I mean, think about your Facebook, think about your Instagram, the people you follow, the people you're friends with. My guess is, and I'm just wagering here, my guess is there are people that are on your social media platforms that you're probably not really close friends with. You might not even call them a friend realistically. Right? They're just people that we send a friend request to. But again, we're using that word friend, and we're requesting friendship from this person. But what does friend mean? Right? Because not only are our social media filled with people that we're maybe not all that fond of or familiar with, but there are people at times that literally will send you a request and they don't even know you. And I think about how crazy is that? That there are people claiming, from the world's perception that we're saying that we're friends with these people and we don't even know them. That's odd. Beyond that, it gets weirder. I promise it gets weirder. I'm not sure how deep this well goes, but it does get weirder on social media. There's a thing called buying followers. You can go out, you can buy followers. Prior to the start of the church, I began talking with some people about digital media, and this guy, he's encouraged me to buy a few thousand followers for our church Instagram page. He goes, because it gives you online credibility. What? Like, honestly, and I get it. I get it from a marketing. If I was starting a business, I would totally see the value in that. But Jesus doesn't need a sales pitch. He doesn't need online, a presence for credibility. You know what credibility he gave us? He rose from the dead. And then he's alive and he's living in the world and he's changing people's lives. And so this idea that we need 4,000 people following us on Instagram when 100 people come to this church, that just seems weird. And I've been to churches where they have that. I can specifically remember going to this church in Detroit a few years back prior to COVID. And if you look from social media, you would think, man, I'm walking into this like monstrosity of a church, right? I'm thinking there was like 40 people there. I was like, this is weird. And I came in with this high expectation, this high, oh yeah, this church is going to knock my socks off, right? Because, I mean, look at their online. And I went in thinking that did not meet the expectations that I had. And ultimately, what we want to do as a church in our philosophy is we want you to be able to come in here and think, wow, that exceeded the expectation that I had of coming to this small church. Right? We don't, and so we don't need this online, but like literally, you buy fake accounts that follow you. That weird? Or is that just me? Okay, you guys sleeping this morning? Come on now. All right, let's get it together, folks. But when we think about friendship, it's just odd to me the direction of the world that we're moving in, because it seems as though people would rather have a larger platform that has a perception of realness to it, but it isn't real, than a smaller platform that's real, that has meaning, there's purpose, there's value. And so it's just odd to me that we're exchanging something that's real for something that's fake. And so social media, again, oftentimes is filled with people that we don't have any sort of affinity towards, like we aren't close, we don't know each other that well, or it's even filled with people that aren't real. And yet we all know the facade that comes along with social media is that we put out a highlight reel, right? We put out our best days, our best moments, our best faces, in hopes of this crowd, this fake crowd that's around us, to think something about us, to feel some way about us. And again, it's just, okay, are we understanding that what we're doing just doesn't make a whole lot of sense? That we're desperate for people to think some way about us, that our friends would think something about us. And that's why I'm saying that friendship in the modern vernacular is a bit weird, because the Bible, when we talk about friendship from the Bible, it has something so much more profound, something so much deeper, something so much richer. And I'm not saying that people don't get that. I'm not saying that we all don't understand what real friendship is, or that we don't have real relationships. I'm just saying in general, when we use this word friend and friendship, in our modern society, it's getting foggy, it's getting weird. And I just generally think, hey, let's not cheapen that word. When we call somebody a friend, do we know what that means? And do we know how to actively be a friend? Because guess what? In order to have a friend requires you to what? Be a friend. Requires us to be a friend. And so I think that God's intent for this word is rich. Didn't Jesus say that there was no greater form of love than that which would lay down their life for what? Friend. He said there's no greater love than the type of love that would lay down their life for a friend. And maybe you're here this morning and you hear the word friendship and you have an unsettling feeling when you hear that. Because maybe for you, there was this group of people that you had surrounded yourself with, the people you were doing life with, that to your face, you would say, hey, we're jiving well. We matter to one another. But then maybe you heard that there was some chatter behind your back, and then they were saying things about you that wasn't that's not stuff a friend would say. That's not how a friend would treat or talk about you. Or maybe you needed those people to be there for you in a time of need, and they no-showed. You said, hey, I need help here. Well, sorry, that's a lot to ask. I got this other stuff going on, so thanks, but no, sorry, we can't. And so maybe when you hear friend, it's a little bit unsettling. Or maybe you think, hey, you know what? With everything that I've done or everything that's been done to me, am I worthy of friendship? Does my life matter enough? Do I count? Does anybody want me? Maybe you've come into that place this morning and you say, hey, I feel that way. I feel as though, does anybody want me? You feel lonely. I heard this from a pastor recently. If that's you, if you're in that place of feeling lonely, feeling as though nobody wants you, I'm here to assure you that Jesus does. Come to a place where you feel like people have turned their backs on you and you feel as though you have no real community, no sense of relationship, and you say, I desire that. I promise you, Jesus wants that with you. It's why Jesus in the scriptures refers to himself as being the friend of sinners. There's this idea that Jesus is the friend of sinners. Don't misunderstand me. Don't misunderstand that statement. Though Jesus is a friend of sinners, does not mean he validates sin or that he's cool with it. No, what we'll see within the context of what real friendship is that sometimes a friend comes into your life to be able to chisel away at sin in your life. That they would actually call things out in you that aren't making you like Jesus. Because there's this great fallacy going on in the world right now that in order to be a friend or in order to be loved and cared for by someone means that you agree with everything that they do. That's not real friendship. That's not real love. That's not real care. And we'll see that in our text as we dive into it a little bit. And so if we understand that friendship causes us to be molded and conformed and changed, then don't believe for a second that Jesus is not coming into your life to do that very thing. That if Jesus were to come into your life and be able to mold and shape you more into the image of himself, you got to understand that he's going to say something. Jesus is going to disagree with you. Jesus disagrees with me all the time. And I hate that. I hate when Jesus disagrees with me. Because I generally think, I'm not that bad of a guy. And yet he still finds these things. Tell you got to sharpen up here. Tell, hey, when you said that wasn't helpful, that wasn't loving. And so Jesus has this element of, yes, I love you. Jesus is a friend of sinners. He's going to meet you where you're at. Jesus is not inviting you to come to him all cleaned up and having your life all together. That's not how Jesus invites people to himself. No, I love how Max Lucado says it. He says, God loves you just the way you are, but he refuses to leave you that way. He wants you to be like Jesus. And that's what friendship and the Christian understanding of the scriptures, that's what friendship is. It's more than just this presentation. It's more than just posting a picture of you and this other person on social media and saying, hey, look at my friend. It's more than that. It's more than getting a like and a hit of dopamine every time that happens. No, it's deeper. And there's this idea that ultimately that this friend would come into your life to help strengthen, that would meet you in your time of need and help. And the idea of friendship wouldn't be about what do I get out of this, but how can I give? How can I love? How can I serve this person so that they might become more like Jesus? This is the Christian understanding of friendship. And how countercultural is that? If your friendship with someone isn't predicated on them performing for you, but it's about you serving them, watch how hard it is for that person to let you down. Like if your understanding of friendship is predicated on how can I serve you, how can I love you, care for you, watch how hard it is for that person to let you down. If you're not coming into it with the expectation that this person is going to come and heal me, fix me, serve me, if that's the expectation, watch how easily that person lets you down. But if it's the reversal, this was and is the way of Jesus. And the evidence of being one of Jesus' disciples isn't about how well you receive love, but it's about how much you give it. Right? Jesus says, and by this, people will know that you are my disciples. By what? By how you receive love from one another. By how you give love and show love towards one another. It's not about receiving, it's about giving in the Christian understanding of friendship. And again, that doesn't always mean, love doesn't always mean agreement. And sometimes, we'll see in our text, sometimes love requires us to do the hard things, say the hard things. If you would turn me to Proverbs 27, it'll be up on the screen. We're going to look at starting on verse 6. Starting on verse 6, and we're going to jump around this chapter. But there's a few things in here that Solomon is really highlighting about friendship. Verse 6, faithful are the wounds of a friend, and profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Anyone like getting checked? Anyone have a friend come in and say something hard to them? Say, hey, I disagree with how you're doing this or that. Anybody like that? I didn't think so. I don't. But the Bible here would say, hey, if a friend is coming in and they're saying the hard thing to you, you might want to listen to that. You should probably listen to that. And we're not talking about the hard thing being like a friend's retaliating. You're in the middle of a fight and you're saying things, shot for shot, punch for punch, saying, hey, trust what they're saying. No, not that. We're talking about a friend who has a strong relationship with you, a real love for you, care for you, serving you, and they come in and they say, hey, I see this issue in your life. The Bible would say, hey, you can trust that. Because as uncomfortable as it is receiving, it's equally as uncomfortable as giving it. Right? Anyone like going up to a friend? Like the Bible's really saying, hey, you know what? If this person loves you think they want to say that? You think they have any intention of hurting you, harming you, if they really love you? Well, no. But in love, they will. In love, they will say the hard thing. And I've been on the receiving end of both. I remember years ago doing college ministry, and one of my high school friends at the time had come, and he had began flirting with just about every girl imaginable. And he began developing a reputation. And while he was developing this reputation, we were doing a Bible study together, and I knew about it. I mean, it was there. I saw it. I mean, there was one time I specifically remember after the evening was over, he was talking to this girl, and he had pulled up his phone with a new contact already set up, and he hands her his phone and he says, you should give me your number. She literally tossed the phone back at him. It was awesome. Because he was totally out of line. I mean, that was like, so you're just meeting this person with the very first interaction, and you're just like, hey, give me your number. That would be great. And she just threw it back at him. And I was like, that's awesome. Sorry, probably wasn't needed, but I like telling it. And so after a Bible study, when it was like a Tuesday night or something, I just said, hey, can we talk? And I mean, it was uncomfortable. It was really uncomfortable. I said, hey, when you go from girl to girl to girl, just trying to get them to like you or show some sort of interest in you and then move, this is the perception that gives. And this is the perception you have. It was uncomfortable. But it was in compassion and knowing that he's hurting himself in the long run here would cause that, conversation to happen. It was through an idea of love, not because I wanted to hurt him, though I knew it might hurt. And then when I worked at camp down in Georgia, I got invited to work there from a friend from high school, and she, after about the first or second week, asked to pull me aside and said, hey, you're just acting like really different. You're trying really hard to be funny. And I said, I am. It was uncomfortable. I wanted to respond in humor because I felt uncomfortable, right? Getting called out. She said, but you're not acting yourself, and I really think you're robbing other people because you're an enjoyable guy, but not when you're putting on a show for everybody else. You stop it. And I wanted to be defensive. I wanted to arm my, and push back and not receive that. But a few weeks later, I saw it. I understood it. And so we rarely want to accept that feedback in the moment. But it can be a real act of love if a friend does that. And if a friend is doing that, I think the Bible would say, take it seriously. Listen to it. And again, we're starting off as we look at chapter 27. We see in verse 6, at times friendship isn't always just this glamorous thing. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes we say things that would be hard to hear. But again, a friend doing this, it can be trusted. And again, that's general. We're not talking about a friend retaliating against you. We're talking in this general sentiment where there's no hard feelings, but a friend is coming up and sharing. Listen to that. The second half of this verse is that profuse are the kisses of an enemy. And I'm sure to some level or degree, many of us have experienced something like this, where you thought certain people were your friends, only to find out they were speaking behind your back, saying things about you that weren't loving or caring, or that they weren't there for you when you needed them. I like this quote from Jerry Bridges. He says this: who would not choose this faithful wound, however painful at the moment of infliction, rather than the multiple kisses of an enemy? The kiss of the apostate was a bitter ingredient in the Savior's cup of suffering. That element of Judas, that's what Jerry Bridges is referencing. He's referencing that moment where Judas went around with Jesus. He experienced all the miracles, and he did life with Jesus, giving this perception that, hey, we're close. When Jesus is telling his disciples that, hey, one of you tonight is going to betray me, all of them were saying, not I, not I, not I. I would never, I would never, I would never. And yet, Judas, a disciple of Jesus, would betray him. That happens where at times, the scripture tells there are times where there's a bunch of show, but no real love, no real friendship. That's the profuse are the kisses. There's an image, a perception that isn't reality. No real friendship is there. That friendship is not something that is merely seen. There'll be times when people come around and say really nice things to you. The Bible says that doesn't mean they're your friend. The Bible says it doesn't mean that they're your friend. Examine, look deeper. The Bible's pushing us and showing us that friendship is more than just this glamorous show or compliments. Let's jump down a few verses in our chapter, down to verse 10. Solomon has more for us. He says, do not forsake your friend and your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. Do not forsake a friend. Can't good friends be hard to come by? Anybody experience that? Wow, you guys all must be like really cool. Can I be your guys' friend? But good friends can be hard to come by. And Solomon is saying, hey, don't forsake that. Don't forsake a good friendship. Don't leave that. It's not as easy as an exchange. It's not giving back and forth. This isn't something you always come across. There ought to be a bond that goes so deep that it doesn't allow for that. A real friendship doesn't allow for you to just do a quick exchange. There will be times when the hard work of friendship doesn't feel worth it. There'll be times when you want to throw in the towel with a friend because, hey, you know what? It's just getting difficult. It's getting hard. I don't necessarily want to deal with it. And so it might just be easier, and maybe that's why we revert to social media friendship, because real friendship is hard. It's not just because it's hard, but there's something there, something of substance that we have to tend for, that we have to care for. That is not just a show. And so there will be times when throwing in the towel feels like it makes sense, and Solomon would share with us, trust me, it's more than what you want to lose. Losing a real friend is more than you want to lose. Again, this is wisdom. A man who had about everything imaginable. Wealth, sex, fame. I mean, he had it all. And he's telling you, in the midst of having everything, in acquiring everything, I'm going to tell you what you don't really want to lose. There'll be, you lose money, that's one thing. You don't want to lose a friend. You don't want to lose a friend. Friendship is a precious commodity, and in your life, you'll realize you can't afford to lose too much of it. Friendship is a precious commodity, and in your life, you'll realize you can't afford to lose too much of it. You can tell Solomon sees the value in the things that he's saying about this bond of friendship, and there ought to be a real bond. That even the point, you see the second part of that? He says, don't forsake your friendships, but also don't even forsake the friendships of your father. Right? He's talking about family friends at this point. He's saying, even those you don't want to just lose, those aren't always easy to come across. People that would genuinely care for you in such a way, again, that goes deeper than just a presentation, that goes deeper than just compliments. But that there will be this real idea of friendship, you don't want to lose it, not even a family friend. And Solomon understood this. You see this in 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 1 through 10, after he's become king, right? His father David was the king for a long time. Now Solomon's the king. And in chapter 5, verses 1 through 10, we see the bond that Solomon has with Hiram, a devout friend of David's. It doesn't say that he's a devout friend of Solomon's, but he shows up at the point of Solomon becoming king, and it says that Hiram, a devout friend of David's, was there for Solomon. That's interesting. Solomon saw the necessity of this wisdom. Now, what's said next is very interesting because remember our setting here, right? Ancient Near East, where the family is of the highest priority. And so when we see these words penned that say, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity, the original audience is hearing this thinking, what are you saying? right? Because for an Israelite, when times get hard, guess what? The family gets closer. We realize that we're here for one another, that we have each other's backs, and so we're looking for the family to care for us in our time of need. And he's saying here, don't go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. I mean, this would have just been a shock to the audience. And so Solomon here is enforcing this idea of that bond that you ought to have with a friend. It's similar to that of the family. Just like you wouldn't let a family member go down, care for your friend in that way. That sounds absurd. Now, the caveat is that you wouldn't go to your brother who's far away when you have a friend who's near. So it isn't necessarily saying that a friend would take precedent over family. That's not necessarily what the text is saying. Solomon is saying in regards to that bond that you have for your friend, he's saying just like you wouldn't let the family member fall, you don't let a friend fall. Care for them in that same way. Open your homes. Swing the doors open. Create another space at the table. Don't be so closed. Again, this is work. This is the hard work of friendship. Right? That it isn't just a public perception, but it's an opening of your doors. It's creating a space at your table. That you would meet and care for the needs of your friend, just like you would a family member. Like if you saw a family member in need and you would seek to care for that, meet it, you don't let a friend suffer alone. Again, it's work, it's uncomfortable, but I promise you it's richer than Facebook. Now we're going to look down at one more verse in our passage this morning. Jump down with me to verse 17. Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. I'll say this. Becoming all that God intends for you to become cannot be done in isolation. Introverts, catch this. You're all sinners. Just kidding. Not really. Okay, I'm kidding. But there is an idea here that the Christian life was not intended to be done alone. It's not meant to be done alone. That God is actually using other people, using friends to come into your life and help you in such a way. But as I was working on this message this week, and I was thinking about just how hard real friendship is. Because again, we've talked about real friendship is hard. I do think this is why we see the trend towards social media friendship, because there's no challenge to it. There's no actual challenge to social media friendships, right? We're not looking to get called out. And if somebody does try and call you out, guess what you got? You got a block button. Blocked, unfollowed, right? The moment your social media friendship might actually start turning real is the moment we say we don't want it, right? And so we can block, we can unfollow, we can get rid of. There's no real challenge to like the real challenge to the work of friendship. It's going to require less of me. It's going to require me to invest more into other people. It's going to prioritize others above ourselves. Whereas social media friendship just says, look at me, validate me, me, right? I mean, our social media presence, that's what our friendships generally are. Give me a hit of dopamine. I'm going to give you a picture, like it. Make me feel special, make me feel seen, make me feel valued. But I'm not going to be there for you in your time of need. I'll give you that feeling, but the moment you actually need it, you'll see who your friends are. You're going to see it by action, not by a like on social media. And so because not only is it time, but it's also opening the door of your life, a seat at the table. And because life happens and we at times don't want others to see the not so flattering elements of who we are, it can be easier to say, whoa, I just like the perception that I'm able to give you that you validate. I don't want you to have an open door, an open seat at my table, that you might actually see who I am, how I live, who I am at my core. And we've all experienced this. We've all seen this as a reality. The illustration is going to be your cell phone. On your cell phone, I can tell you who you talk to the most. I can tell you what you shop for the most. You realize you can buy your groceries without ever leaving your house. All that can be done on your phone. I can see what websites you look at the most. I can see the things that you're most excited about. I can look through your photos and your videos and say who you like seeing most. Right? Your phone will be very revealing. Our phones are very revealing about who and what we prioritize, who and what we value. And again, that's showing us maybe a deeper sense of who we are. Right? And it's why for so many people, when you lose your phone, there's this element of, I just feel like my whole life is missing now. I mean, the amount of times in the last 5 to 10 years you've heard the things from your friends or family that you hear people say, how did we used to live in this world before cell phones? Anybody hear somebody say that before? Right? I mean, that's a question. How did they used to survive without cell phones? My guess is, I'm a millennial, so that world was before me. But my guess is they survived quite all right. My guess is they survived quite all right. But there's this element that we see about our cell phones that are very telling about who and what we prioritize. And that's why you don't just give someone a license to go through your phone. They might see things about you that you don't want them to see. Right? And so it's easier to revert to a social media friendship because you don't want somebody that front row seat to your life to be able to call out, to be able to say things that might be helpful but might hurt in the process. Iron sharpening iron, what we see here in verse 17, is iron sharpening iron does create friction. That's reinforcing this idea that friendship isn't always smooth. Sometimes there's rough edges to this thing, and sometimes it actually hurts. But sharpening is actually a good thing. In the end, it makes you better. And in the Christian understanding, friendship makes you more like Jesus. And so when you look at Proverbs chapter 27, I think what Solomon as he expands, as he develops this thought about friendship, as he weaves it in and out, one thing you'll see is that friendship is hard. Friendship isn't always easy. Sometimes it requires you saying the hard thing, doing the hard thing. But then in verse 10, what you see is that there's a bond. It's not for no reason. It's not for no purpose. There's something there. And then in verse 17, that idea of iron sharpening iron, friendship creating friction at times, will be worth it. Will be worth it. This idea that friendship isn't always easy. Sometimes it's hard. Solomon is saying it's worth it. Don't be scared of what comes with friendship. Don't be scared of the hard. It might be painful, but in the end, I promise you, it's deeper, it's better, it's richer than just a performance. It's better than the profuse kisses of an enemy. And again, maybe you're in here and you'd say, you don't know this Jesus guy, but that your experiences with friends and friendships haven't always been the greatest. You've been betrayed. You felt belittled. You felt misunderstood. You felt like you've been stabbed in the back. And so for you, there is a real element of trust issues. Like, hey, I have a hard time trusting because of the things that have been done to me or the things that I've done. And sometimes maybe you just feel so dirty and undeserving of friendship. Can I trust that Jesus is really going to be there for me in my time of need? Can I trust that Jesus will be enough? Can I trust that Jesus is going to do the hard work of friendship? Yes. Yes, you can trust that. You can trust it in love. Jesus came and died for you. That's what the Bible tells us in Romans chapter 5, that God demonstrates his love for us in this, that while we were yet sinners, Christ died. Jesus wasn't looking for relationship in hopes of what you could do for him, but what he could do for you. In the book of Hosea, chapter 6, God says this, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, to know God above burnt offerings. The point being, God's not looking about what you can do for him. And this was a painful reality that I had to face. There was a time when I was losing a job because of a trip that I felt the Lord was leading me towards, and it's like, hey, I need money. I have bills. I can't just not have a job, but I felt so compelled the Lord was leading me towards that. And then when I actually did lose my job for it, when I actually did have to lose that employment, I remember thinking, okay, Lord, why Why did you allow this to happen? I'm serving you. I'm doing all these things. It was this verse, that Hosea 6:6, that nailed me. Like God said, Tyler, I am not looking for the things that you can do for me. I am looking for your heart. God's looking for real relationship with you, not about what you can perform for him, not about what you can do for him. He's done it for you. That whole idea that we've been separated from God because of our sin, there's this cosmic gap between us and God. We would never in a million years earn our way back to God. There's not enough good deeds you could do. That's not the currency that God's looking from you. He would actually call that filthy rags. Your best deeds are like filthy rags before the Lord. Only in the context of understanding that if you're trying to use those good deeds to barter with God, he's saying that's not what I play with. That's not what I work with. And so in this moment, when we're talking about friendship with Jesus and relationship with him, can you trust him? He's already done the hard work. He's already proved it at the cross. And you can know going forward that when you do get confronted by him and his word, and when he's challenging you to live differently, when he's challenging you to repent and turn away from things, you can trust. You can trust. You can trust that those commands, those things that God's calling you towards, are never to harm you, never to hurt you, but to lead you into the fullness of life. God's not trying to rob from you. He wants more for you than this perception of friendship. And the real friendship, the friend of sinners, loves you right where you're at, but loves you enough not to let you stay there. And so if you don't have that relationship and you're looking for that today, I want to invite you to that. The Bible would tell us that if we were to confess with our mouths and believe in our hearts that God raised Jesus from the dead, we would be saved. We would have this relationship. We would have a relationship with the friend of sinners that moves beyond friend to Lord and Savior. And so I want to invite you to that this morning. I want to invite you to that real relationship. There's no magical prayer. There's no mystical words. It's a confession of Jesus. I want you to be Lord of my life, and a belief that God raised Jesus from the dead. And what that belief tells us is that he paid the bill in full, and it's not up to me to pay for it. I'm not working for salvation. I'm working from it. Jesus accomplished it fully, freely, forever through his death, burial, and resurrection. Let me pray for us.